We are back, baby. Wanted to kind of add on to what James just did this morning with a surprise episode of the Huddle House. Didn't tell a soul. Just me and Ty have had this in the works, and y'all have been clamoring for it for a hot minute. So, how you doing, Ty?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Repping the Jimmies today. I had to bring it back
I
out.
love it.
Had to do it right, man. First one of the season. Been a long time. Like I'm surprised that like this thing still works. It feels like it's been so long. I almost couldn't remember how to hit record on the Zoom call, but here we are.
Yeah, I know. And I'm having to do this from my phone because my computer, which is getting a little old, is the camera's malfunctioning, and it's just showing like a black screen, like it's not like shining on me at all. So I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna have to go with the phone. So yeah, it's a little bit of a makeshift episode, but we're gonna try to throw something together. Bear with us. It's been a obviously busy week, so just wanted to give you guys a little something. So Ty, I feel like we're coming to the guys this season with a little bit of a different mindset because last year we're both kind of in the playoff hunt, kind of above average type teams, and now our commissioner seems to think we're both going to have top three picks. So
Thinks I'm gonna have the
things have
number
shifted a
one.
little.
He thinks I'm gonna have the number
Yeah,
one pick. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be too upset with that given the state of everything. It does hurt to see my name at the bottom of the list. I feel like, I'd like to know how the decision was made to put Jordan above me. I don't know if that was a coin flip. I don't know if it came down to tiebreak. I don't know how he did the rules. I just feel like, it's something you take note of being at the bottom of the list. It's nice to in a perfect world that would be the number one pick. But yeah, you're right, man. Like we're kind of in a rebuilding stage, both of our teams. I mean, you've tasted the playoffs, as also you saw in that post. I've not. Just me and Chris are the only ones. So really, just two barbs dug in me in that post right there. It was a tough read. It was a tough read. Yeah.
yeah. I noticed that as I was reading it. I'm like, dang, Ty's not going to be super happy reading these excerpts on him.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
it'll just make the victories even sweeter whenever they do come. Please, God,
exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
So anyhow, what about you though? I mean, draft day was crazy with all the trades that happened and the shakeups, and that's really what has laid the groundwork for an episode. I mean, James did the breakdown of how many trades we had. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a ton on
There's a
draft.
lot. Draft day always does that to us. You get everybody together, everybody starts having their little side conversations, kind of whispering in each other's ears. Stuff starts getting swirling. I think everybody kind of gets the trade frenzy and kind of wants to make moves. And I think it's easier to convince somebody in person, I feel like sometimes, than it is over the phone. Allows people to be slightly more impulsive and kind of go with their instincts. Whereas I'm sure you've probably seen when it's over the phone, it allows for each of these guys to kind of talk to three, four other people, kind of get some other voices in to deconvince them. And I mean, myself included, I'm not immune to that. I'm just saying, I think sometimes in the moment it's a little easier to get some stuff done. So we had a lot of fun with it, but yeah, it was busy. I completely, changed the landscape of my team, as did you. I think we were both kind of in a similar type spot where we had good teams, teams that could compete for the next, year or two, potentially make a little bit of a run, but not quite in that upper echelon of those top three or four teams that really, are strong contenders. And, when you have a lot of aging assets like Travis Kelsey, Derrick Henry, I had, Debo Samuel, Cooper Cup, you're kind of looking at the potential of sitting on your hands and those guys retiring or getting an injury or something that kind of just crushes their value.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in these awkward spots where it's like, do you just try to make one or two more runs at it and potentially get lucky in the playoffs and pull a Brandon and win as a six seed or something? Or do you, kind of realize where you're at, realize what you have, and decide to kind of start fresh with some more youth, So I think we both kind of made the same decision.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so as far as we go, our teams, it doesn't seem like the most excitement to talk about, but there's definitely some people that have made some significant strides towards being competitive this year. And I guess if we were going to start off, and I guess what we're really going for in this episode is just set the table for week one. Maybe we talk through some week one matchups and see these current teams as they stand now, just catch
Yeah,
people up to speed on what's happened. So, uh,
that works.
I mean, where should we start here? I guess with maybe the guy who has the strongest team in the league with Lucas.
Yeah. Yeah, we got Lucas playing you.
Yep. Yep. We
Um,
take on each other. And I've got to go up against Travis as soon as I traded him to him. So I'm
yeah,
probably not gonna be checking my phone much that day.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah. Um,
I think the biggest thing for Lucas going into this offseason was depth at running back and then tight end depth, just with Hawkinson being banged up, recovering from that ACL. Don't know what the timeline looks like there. And I think I helped him address both those with the trades to get Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford as well as Kelsey. So he dispelled some draft capital to acquire those players, but I mean, not at like obviously at the expense of a draft pick, but like he still has two in 2026 that are going to be higher than his was. So he still has a lot of significant capital there. I feel like. So I think his team just got stronger and even more ripe to compete now. So I mean, he's got a good squad. I don't even know what you could really
yeah.
put a hole in unless you want to talk about quarterback. But even then,
I
Lawrence
mean,
is good.
the quarterback is only like minor weakness, but it's not a major weakness. Trevor Lawrence is still a great quarterback. I mean, fringe top 10 type guy. So, I mean, it's not like, I mean, there's going to be some quarterbacks that he goes up against that are a little better than him, but I don't know if the gap is going to be big enough to kind of make up the amount of points that I expect a lot of his skill positions to outscore other teams' skill positions. So I don't think it's a big enough weakness for him to really have a whole lot of concerns. He has an absolutely stellar team, and I agree with you. I mean, the weaknesses he had was running back depth. He had absolutely nobody outside of those two, basically, and then he also, yeah, didn't really have a great tight end with Hawkinson out for a good chunk of the season, so that could have potentially held him up, first half of the year. His bench is still not fantastic, but I don't think in a 14 team league, too many guys do have great benches. So I think that's totally fine because I mean, he's still got a few guys that are playable. Like for example, Nick Chubb was a good play, and Jamison Williams, if he takes that next step, could be at least playable if need be. But yeah, I mean, there's nobody that are really matching his starters in terms of just pure star power. So assuming they all stay healthy and play up to speed, he's going to be a real powerhouse.
Yeah. I'll start with me there in week one. Uh,
Yeah, Ty, I hate to say it, man. I don't really give you a great chance. I look at the running back duos, and I don't know if Kendra and Ty Chandler are gonna really be able to match up super well.
yeah, we're a little thin. We're a little thin there. How it goes. We
Yeah,
we don't need to spend too much time on it. That is what it is. Um,
yeah,
let's bounce on to a next one. Maybe one that'll be a little more competitive. Like the next one up for me here is James and Caleb. And I think I'm very excited this year just to watch Caleb's team because it's going to be such a stark contrast from what he kind of was going for last year. It'll be nice to see his team back to winning and then trying to win should be the word to use.
Mhm.
He was like what, the 3 seed or something the year before last, maybe even higher than that. Like he's definitely won in the past. So this is a tough test for the reigning champ here, and James. I think he's a totally different team that Caleb brings in. What do you think of when you look at this matchup, Matt?
Man. I mean, I look at two of the top probably 4, 5 teams in the league. We got the defending champ. Didn't really have a whole lot of roster change. A few minor things here and there maybe, but for the most part, this core is still intact. He still has CMC, who's gonna be amazing again. No reason to believe he wouldn't. Travis Etienne, still a great top 10-ish back. Still a little bit of an older receiving core with Devontae Adams still there, and guys like him and Terry McLaurin and stuff. But overall, still going to be great for this season. So I mean, James isn't really going anywhere. Still see him as a top 3, top 4 squad. Only minor weakness is quarterback, but I still think his quarterbacks are pretty good. I think Kyler's poised for a good season, so I don't think that's a major holdup. And then Caleb, who's I think you could make a strong argument. Caleb's probably had the most change to his team this offseason. I think he's probably been the busiest owner. And I mean, I can't really say there's been too many deals that he's clearly lost. I think he's won probably the majority of them. So, I mean, he's got a great young squad. He's got Marvin. He's got Malik Neighbors. He just got Trey McBride, who's going to be a top 5 tight end most likely. DK's still formidable. Lamar Jackson's obviously a top 5 quarterback. And I mean, yeah, and I'm huge on Jahmyr Gibbs, in his ascension. So, honestly, I'm kind of crazy, but I think I'm gonna honestly make the hot take. I think Caleb has a slightly better season than James, honestly, but I think James wins week 1 just because I think some of those rookies for Caleb, as good as they will be in their careers, might have slightly slow starts, if I had to guess. So I'll take James in the matchup, but Caleb, I think, might actually have a better season.
I think that's a sound take. Definitely hear what you're saying about the rookies potentially starting out slow and just maybe taking some time to find their footing. There's definitely a thought of that. Then again, like you think about Jamar Chase, like he started off his rookie year first game with a bang. So I mean, like it can definitely be done. So I would definitely and those guys are so explosive. I mean, one play. I think that's the main difference here. I think that James has a higher floor. I think Caleb just has a much higher ceiling because all of James's his flex guys and even really like his wide receivers to an extent are all kind of like their value comes in a lot of their usage and like touchdowns more than anything, which like everybody does. But like I think it takes more usage for them to get their touchdowns, like your Joe Mixon and your James Conner and your Christian Kirk. Like they're just more yardage guys, reception guys, rushing yard guys. Whereas like with Marvin and with Neighbors and DK, McBride, Gibbs, like I feel like that's just explosive and can rip off a long run or a long catch. And, the same points that one of like a Mixon or Connor gets in one game, those guys get in one play. So I think those high ceiling guys could really swing a lot of weeks in Caleb's favor. Now, that being said, there's probably a lot of weeks where that high floor of James will win out. So I do think this one's a toss up. My gut was telling me to lean with James just because of Caleb's team being reliant on a lot of rookies. Gibbs kind of being a little banged up, not sure if he's going to be full go. Then you can also look at the other side of the coin, and McCaffrey's been banged up too. So I really do think this one's a toss up, but I probably leans James too. Plus, Caleb still has a running back too that feels like it needs to be kind of figured out for him to be the full competitive team he wants to be this year. Maybe it's an injury that happens to somebody in Chicago that gives Herbert an opportunity. But just my thoughts there.
Yeah, another thing to note real quick before we move on, which I'll say this pretty briefly, but Caleb, outside of really, I guess, Jacoby Myers, who's solid, doesn't really have a whole lot on his bench. And Rashee Rice, I mean, we don't really know. I mean, it's starting to seem like maybe he'll get away with a slap on the wrist, but there's still the potential of a suspension for at least a few games. And if that happens, then that could swing it too a little bit because, Caleb will be forced to kind of start a slightly less intriguing option there. So,
I mean, it could be
just another thing to kind of keep in note.
And Rashee could be like a next year suspension too. I think they did something like that with Camaro where it didn't even hit him for 1 year and then it came the year after. Maybe I'm wrong there, but
yeah, it's starting to see. I mean, with every day that passes, I mean, we're pretty dang close to the season now. We're like 2 weeks away, and I feel like we would have heard something by now if he's going to get anything. So, I mean, good chance he dodges it. I'm just saying it's still something to keep in the back of the mind just in case. But
yeah,
when we're projecting, so. Next up I got is Chris and Mitri on mine. So let's kind of talk about these teams a little bit. So Chris didn't make a crazy amount of moves, at least not that I really remember. But he did make some moves, obviously, in the draft. Adding Ladd McConkey and I think did he also get Keon Coleman? I'm pretty sure.
he did.
Yeah, Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey to the squad. And then, but for the most part, he did get DeAndre Swift in a deal.
Yeah,
with Lucas.
First for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah. So there's definitely been a couple moves, but for the most part, he's got a similar squad. I think he's a little bit weak at running back. I do think Tajay Spears could potentially be a little bit of a sleeper and could potentially expand his role in the backfield. I do still believe in him, but still not someone you really want to rely on. And then Najee's kind of in a split 50-50 backfield and,
Yeah.
an offense that is good, but not great, So that's not really the most exciting ceiling type player either. Love CJ Stroud. He's definitely set at quarterback. That's no doubt. But then in Mike Evans, I mean, as long as that man's breathing and walking, he's going to find a way to get 1,000 yards. So um, can't really sleep on Mike. As old as he is at this point, he still seems to find a way to produce. So that should be fine. But I think what kind of holds him back is, he's kind of got a couple of guys like Ladd and Romeo Dobbs and stuff that he's really going to be banking on to kind of have explosive, like higher than expected ceilings this year that don't really have a whole lot of track record to prove that. So, we'll see if they can. Then Chris could potentially be a fringe playoff team or someone that can at least be in that combo. But if they don't, I think he might have too many roster holes to really be a top six guy, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You want to kind of recap a little bit, or
yeah, I'll go to Meach because I think I mean, obviously, I look at his team and I just kind of see yours there with like Debo, Pittman, and Schultz lined up right next to each other. It reminds me of your
yeah.
team. But I think
Well,
that
it was a big trade.
it was a lot of pieces there. Mitri obviously went a strong direction with his team to trade that pick and acquire so many pieces to help him win. And he also does that with Adunze in there, who we all think is going to be a good player. So I think the question there is just, how soon does Adunze take a step to become the one or the two target there in Chicago? It kind of seems like he's going to be the three to start out just because of the established guys in front of him. May not be the case, but I think there's outside of those guys, there's really two things you look at on his team, and that's Algier as the RB2, and then Wandale Robinson as one of his flexes. Wandale coming off an injury, but also they just brought in, Malik there to be the obvious alpha. So I definitely think there's a role for Wandale. We'll see how that develops for him. And I mean, who knows what the Falcons are going to do with Algier because they seem to absolutely love that guy. So he could get some weeks there, but it does seem like, he's starting somebody who's a backup on his team. And that kind of, and it's not like it's a backup where it's a timeshare like what we assume Tajay Spears and the other guy there, Tony Pollard, like what they're going to be. So
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of a difference there. Mitri did add some depth with like Jerry Judy, Traylon Burks. So he has some guys that are in. I mean, it's a name. It's a name. First round draft cap. Sometimes we're really high. I mean, and
I know
another.
you love Traylon.
I can't quit him. I think this one. I think this one could be a fun matchup, man. I really feel like it's going to come down to who's rookie. Kind of has a better week one there. Ladd McConkey versus Roma Dunze, and I feel like if I had to make a pick today, I'd probably choose Chris. I think that he has a little bit of a fuller lineup, top to bottom.
Yeah, I would probably lean Chris for sure because even though Jonathan Taylor is my favorite running back out of those four, I think, yeah, Tyler Algier is likely only to get a couple points more than likely unless he can bolt for a touchdown or something. Whereas both of Chris's guys probably going to get him at least 8 to 10 points somewhere in that ballpark. So I think that'll kind of balance out. I love Chris Moore at tight end, obviously with Laporta. Receiving cores to me are comparable, so I think I'll take Chris overall. But yeah, it could be a good matchup for sure.
All right, where to next?
I guess we can do Carter and Jake, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about Carter first. So he just made a huge trade with Caleb just a couple days ago, acquiring Jalen Waddle and a first-round pick, Mitri's next year. That's really solid deal for him. I mean, I know he did give up McBride and Rasheed and stuff, but I think overall getting a top 12 type receiver like Waddle is definitely going to help him out a lot. Saquon Barkley's a little bit of a wild card this year, could potentially have the ceiling of being a top 3 guy with being in that high-powered offense, but it'll be interesting just to kind of see what that red zone or that goal line kind of work looks like between him and kind of Jalen Hurts kind of on the goal line. Are they going to tush push? Or are they going to give it to Saquon? Just some stuff like that could potentially limit his ceiling a little bit. Plus, they're such a good passing offense. Still like him though. he did upgrade at quarterback, obviously getting Caleb Williams. I think he'll probably start Jared Goff probably early in the season, I would assume, but he's, I think he's got his quarterback for the future now. Where Carter's still kind of a little bit held back is just sort of the running back position. I was actually just talking to him about it the other day, and I know he's not really a huge believer in Pollard and Zach Moss. You're a Bengals fan, you probably know better than me, but it seems like he could potentially be in a stiff competition with Chase Brown and potentially at some point in the year lose that job because, in my opinion, Chase Brown's better. So, I think at the best that might be a committee. So that might be the kind of the thing holding Carter up, but I still think he's a solid guy, kind of in that 7 to 9 range in the league right now, kind of just on the outside looking in. I think if he can improve the running back position a little bit, I think he's got a real shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'll talk about Jake. I mean, obviously a huge transformation of his roster there on draft day. Made the move to get Derrick Henry. Made the move to get Cooper Kupp. He was very gung ho on trying to get some of those veterans to make his team a competitor, and he also added quite a few players in the draft. So I definitely feel like he's got a scrappy team here. I think just when I look at it, it kind of comes down to just being very reliant on running backs there. And I mean, Jaden Reed and Cooper Kupp being your wide receivers. Jaden Reed had a great rookie year. I'm high on him as a player. I think Cooper Kupp, you're hoping he can bounce back to what he has been. Derrick Henry, you feel pretty good about that. Kyron, wondering what's going to happen with Corum being in the fold now. But I do like Zamir and Javante. I think they have chances to. I think Javante can bounce back this year, and I think Zamir has an opportunity to be a lead back. So I mean, that's nice to have in your flex. I think it just kind of comes down to, again, wanting or wondering about the explosive nature of that team and the seeming ability to just like pop off and have really high weeks. And I definitely think if we're comparing the two here, I see that more with Carter's team just because Waddle's a very explosive player. Cooper, even though he's older, proved last year he's still very explosive. And DJ Moore did the same thing. And Saquon has always been that way as a running back, even through injuries. So I think that it might be a situation where you're looking at a team with a higher ceiling of Carter and perhaps in some cases a higher floor with Jake. So I think it's interesting how those matchups seem to kind of be in play a lot here in week one. I think I'm going to lean Carter in this one though. I like the idea of Saquon having a big week there, making an impression in Philly, and I think that he's all in on the Bears, and I think that's going to be a probably fruitful experiment this year. I think they're going to be pretty good, so I'm rolling with Carter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna try to pick the exact opposite of you this time since so far we've been in lockstep, but I can't pick Jake, so I'm going Carter just more just due to resentment.
Nice.
Got to reignite the rivalry somehow.
Yeah.
Even though Jake might potentially, he might have the better team this year, I'll admit. But I kind of went bare bones. But let's move on to Brandon and Austin really quick. Austin doesn't really change his team a whole lot. He sent away Taysom Hill, but other than that, this pretty much his only trade difference. He did draft a couple guys. He got Trey Benson and I guess that's the only real notable
the computer
that he really got.
The computer picked Trey Benson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, 100%. I'm just saying it's on his team. But still, I mean, this guy was a top 3 or 4 team last year. No reason to think he wouldn't be again. Puka, no reason to suspect he wouldn't have a great sophomore season. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we know how good he is, top 3 or 4 at the position. Kind of a older kind of running back duo with Alvin Kamara. David Montgomery's not super young, but I think both those guys should produce. I do think with the ascension of Gibbs, I think Montgomery's bound to do a little worse than last year, but I still think he'll be good. I still think he's 100% a very startable RB2. I just think that I don't know if he quite replicates the magic he put together last year for most of the year. I think the touchdowns, a lot more of those go to Gibbs. A lot of them were going to Montgomery last year. So I don't love him as much, but I still think he's good. Alvin Kamara, assuming he can stay healthy. I know it's a terrible offense, but they have nothing else other than like him and Olave.
Mhm.
and Derek Carr's not talented enough to throw it 30 yards downfield, so they're probably just going to be dump offs to Alvin Kamara. So it
Yeah.
should work, at least until the wheels fall off eventually with that guy. But there's been no signs of it. I mean, he was like a top 10 guy once he came back last year, so should still be good. Mark Andrews still good. Keenan Allen should still be okay. I think the two big question marks with Austin is does JSN take a leap this year? Because right now he's kind of his flex kind of guy, and there's not really a whole lot on the bench to start over JSN. So we'll see if he can kind of take the leap and actually be like a really solid, flexible guy. And then I think the other question is just how good is Anthony Richardson? Because I think he's clearly the highest ceiling quarterback on Austin's team. Herbert's probably a slightly better floor, but with that terrible Chargers offense, I think his ceiling is capped this year, whereas Richardson's ceiling is through the roof. So we'll just see how good Richardson actually is. He showed those flashes last year, but we just need to see if he can put it all together and stay healthy.
Yeah. I mean, great summation there. I love Austin's team. And he doesn't make many moves, but his roster is just it's rock solid. And go over to Brandon, our two-time champ. He did make a few moves this year. Swapped Ayuk for pick, or he swapped Pickens for Ayuk. I like that deal. And he also,
Yeah.
what else might he have done? Kind of blanking on anything else he did, but he made the trade to get Jaden Daniels, get another high upside quarterback on his team. So he was a little active this offseason. And I think he has a good mix of these like young, proven wide receivers with older veterans. Will be interesting to see how it plays out for him. I think if I was like to pick this matchup, I like Austin's roster more, but Brandon is also living in Philly. I just moved to his city. He's my Philly boy, so I'm going with Brandon in this one. Ride or die with my Philadelphia guy.
Nice. You guys are gonna have to send a picture to the group one time of you guys actually at the bar together, hanging out.
Yeah, we're gonna link
When you
up.
see it happen.
We've been texting about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
link up.
that's dope. I'm gonna go with Austin. I'll disagree with you on this one. Um, I just think his team's just better as a whole. I mean, Brandon's still got a squad. I still think he's a playoff contender. My main question marks for Brandon are just sort of his flexes.
Mhm.
I think Stephon Diggs, as great of a talent as he was, did start to kind of dip the second half of last year. And he's in an offense that, while high powered, has a ton of other potential targets. So I think he's kind of bound for a slight regression. And then also Calvin Ridley, was very up and down last year, more down than up. I feel like was kind of living off some boom weeks, but overall didn't really look quite like the same guy that we used to see in Atlanta. Now he's in an offense that I don't expect will be that great. If Will Levis can make the jump, then maybe he'll be great. But I'm not really super huge on Calvin Ridley necessarily doing that. So I think those two things are kind of what I think will hold Brandon up from really being like elite, but I still think he's a playoff contender as is. But I'm taking Austin.
All right, so we just got two matchups left, I think. Why don't we go with Marcus?
Yeah, we got Marcus. We got Marcus Jordan. I mean, we don't need to talk about this one a whole lot. We can
Wow,
talk about it a little bit.
he really is starting Taysom Hill at quarterback. That's crazy. Guess he has to.
Yeah, he doesn't have any other quarterback unless Justin Fields gets the starting job. Then he's got something. But assuming Russell Wilson gets it, Jordan's screwed. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to start. I think I'm going to pick the guy that has a quarterback to most likely win. If I had to guess,
They did the trade, right? Like Jordan traded Marcus for Lamar,
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen for Lamar straight up, right? And then he swapped Lamar to Caleb for Achan and Kyle Pitts, I think, and Justin Fields.
Yeah, so he didn't even get a quarterback back. So yeah, he doesn't have a quarterback. So
I think he was banking hard. I think he was banking hard on JJ McCarthy, and then that injury was just so unfortunate.
yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take Marcus. I mean, Jordan. The one thing I'll say about him is he's got a solid running back duo. I mean, I think James Cook's in for another pretty good year, and Achan, if he could stay healthy, I mean, we saw what he could do last year. He's very explosive. So I like that running back duo if healthy to be pretty good. But I mean, you look at the rest of his roster. I mean, he doesn't have a quarterback. His RB or wide receiver one's Pickens, who I mean, I think is solid, but not really wide receiver one potential. And then he's got Xavier Worthy, who has potential, look good in the preseason, but he's still a rookie on a very, very competitive offense for targets. So don't love his upside to be like a top 25 guy or anything like that. And then in your flexes, you're starting Shakir and Gabe Davis. I mean, that's pretty thin. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with James's projection. I mean, I don't really see Jordan getting out of the bottom 3 or 4 most likely this year unless he makes some big moves. But I just don't really see it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Marcus, I mean, his team's relatively similar, other than getting as last year, except for getting Josh Allen. But he didn't really have a whole lot going on this draft. I don't think he really had any picks. So I mean, his team is pretty much exactly the same, just with Josh Allen instead. And he had a good team last year, so he should still have a good team this year. I don't really see a whole lot of things to talk about with his team, other than just kind of curious what Mostert does to see if he can kind of capitalize and keep that momentum going from last year. I don't know if I'll see him get to that point again, but we'll see how good Mostert is. Yeah.
There's no
You
shot.
wouldn't think that was kind of felt fluky.
Yeah, I mean, he's played 9 years, and he had 1 year where that was an amazing year. He might be good, but like I don't think he's ever gonna have a year like that again where he gets that many touchdowns.
Yeah, that was that. I don't even know if Marcus is expecting him to. I think the big thing to talk about Marcus's team, probably first time we talked about this really since the last Huddle House. I think this might have happened after that, but I think the big thing that kind of hurt him this year was Eckler and Robinson going to the same team or being on the same team, because now instead of having 2 separate backs that are playable, you're kind of dealing with a committee trying to figure out which one's kind of going to have the better week and be useful. So he's got that Commanders news, but then he's also got Jahan Dotson on the Commanders, who was a great player rookie year and then just fell off the face of the earth, year 2. And now I think he's kind of in a pretty, from what I've read, kind of in a pretty competitive race for that wide receiver 2 spot. So I think really just the Commanders in general have just been kind of kicking Marcus in the teeth this offseason. If he can kind of overcome some of those kind of bad fortunes, and that offense can end up being better than expected, then I think Marcus's ceiling really goes up. But I think that kind of hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he was fortuitous for him that Singletary landed on the Giants, where he's like the only back there, really. So he should get a lot of work, and he's really he's had some good fortune with those running backs that you didn't exactly think were going to like have a longer life, like continuing to have life, like whether it be Mostert or Singletary. Eckler kind of looked like he was down there for a little bit, and he may bounce back. So, and Brian Robinson had a really great year last year. So, I think he's got some good depth there at running back, despite the fact they're on the same team. I think that where it may come into more of a question is just at wide receiver depth and young talent there, specifically outside, obviously, of Jefferson. Lockett's probably close to aging out, and Godwin's still very productive. But I do like him in this matchup as well, and I like his chances long term because, I mean, Breece Hall, Jefferson, and Josh Allen are probably going to be in the top 2, 3 of their respective position groups. And that'll carry you far. All right,
for sure.
We only got a couple minutes here, and that's you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm taking Jeremy. I mean, I think I should. I don't know if I even really want to win. I mean, I'm not going to go all Caleb this year and just completely just try to be terrible. But I mean, I am very much rebuilding, so I am kind of stripping the roster a little bit. So I'm trying to at least be respectable. I'm going to try to at least score 70, 80 points and not 40. But, I don't expect to be crossing triple digits that often with this roster. So I'm going to take the guy that's just clearly better and Jeremy. But I am happy about the moves I made this offseason. Got a couple question marks with a couple of the guys, a couple of the rookies I drafted, just seeing how quickly they could potentially be productive. But I'm really putting a lot of my faith in Brock Bowers being as good as I expect him to be. And then obviously Mahomes stepping up, having a great year, and still got some good running backs to at least work with. But, it's a rebuild. So I'm hoping to have a top 3 or 4 pick. And in order to do that, I have to lose. So I'll take Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, if it's any silver lining, I think you have a clear edge here at running back. But
I definitely do.
you have a massive disadvantage at wide receiver, I would say. That's
Massive,
yeah,
absolutely catastrophic disadvantage.
yeah.
I think the projections are being too nice to me in terms of that difference. Honestly, um, I think the difference is probably about 6 or 7 points at minimum at each of those positions. So yeah, it's
Josh
not close.
is Josh Downs healthy to play week 1?
It's not confirmed. He's going to be kind of up in the air. I mean, they're saying he's trending in the right direction, but they haven't made a consensus decision yet. I mean, it's just they're gonna gauge it. So I mean, if I can't play him, I'm really toast because I don't really have a whole lot on the bench. I mean, I don't know if Pearsall will be ready. Troy Franklin hasn't really produced anything in the preseason to indicate he'll be playable. I'm maybe looking at probably starting like DJ Chark, which is pretty down in the dirt.
I'll finish it off. I'm probably picking the Feather Friends here as well. And
Yeah,
that'll round up our week 1, man. We also got big news with you getting married this Friday.
Saturday.
Saturday, my bad. Friday's the rehearsal. It's all one day to me. It's
Yeah.
all one weekend. Yeah, that's happening.
Yeah, no, man, I'm excited. Maybe if I mean, it won't be the whole league. Maybe if I get half of them there together, maybe we talk some trades.
You never
Have
know.
another little mini draft.
Never know what happens when we all
What?
get together. When we get together, you never know.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, this was fun. We'll get this out to the guys. I'm sure they'll be happy. Kind of get a little double dose of just kind of Huddle Buddies content today. I hope you guys all enjoy it.
All right. See you guys.